So I think what really attracted me to the profession of counselling psychology is that it's a way of working with people that's very relational, that's about creating a warm, understanding relationship with someone and really working deeply at a very emotional level, often very intensely. But at the same time, as counselling psychologists, that we draw on science, we draw on research as a way of understanding the people that we're working with. So it's a really deep combination of those two very important factors that means that it's a very exciting, stimulating, engaging way of working that is very personal, but is also very rigorous and very in-depth. What I do as a counselling psychologist, so I'm mainly an academic in the counselling psychology field. I'm a professor of counselling psychology. So that means that part of my work is around teaching, and I do classes with students where we look at different aspects of counselling psychology theory, like person-centred approach, different skills practice. A lot of the work that I do is supervising students. So doing a research project is a really big part of any counselling psychology training. And I'll supervise different projects and help students to think about the work that they're doing and how to work with participants, how to find participants for their studies, how to design the studies, collect and analyse the data. So that's a big part of my job as well as an academic. And then another really important part is that I lead on various research projects. So for instance, at the moment we're doing a big randomised controlled trial of counselling in schools. We're looking at how effective humanistic counselling is in schools, and we're comparing it against pastoral care as usual. We're also doing different studies like looking at how goals are used in therapy and how clients work towards particular goals in therapy. And we're looking at different feedback mechanisms and different tools that can be used in the process. So there's a range of different research projects that I'm involved in and that I'm leading on. We also have a research centre here at the University of Roehampton, and part of my work involves directing that research centre, organising meetings, supporting colleagues to develop their own research projects. And then I also, as part of that research centre, I also see some clients and do some supervision to support other people in their work, in the work that they're doing. So there's a whole range of different things as an academic. I mean, it's a bit of a different profile from other people who'd work in the counselling psychology field as practitioners. But it's certainly some people in the counselling psychology area do go into academic posts, and it's a very rewarding and interesting way of doing counselling psychology that really suits me. Well, I think what's really nice about being a counselling psychologist is the variety. So we're not just doing one thing all the time. As an academic, there's both working directly with clients, which is really rewarding, and that you're having that very in-depth relationships with people and working at a level of emotional intensity. But then there's also the teaching, where you're working with students and helping people learn and develop as practitioners themselves. Then there's the writing. A lot of my work is also involved in writing, maybe working on books or working on journal papers. So that's some time more on myself or with colleagues where I'm thinking about ideas and developing ideas. And then there's more practical stuff like designing studies and thinking about very practical things like how you get data from one place to another place. So I think counselling psychologists generally, I mean, that's the academic side, but I think generally counselling psychologists, often there is a lot of variety in the work, whether it's doing assessments, doing practice, managing, supervising, and it's that variety that keeps the job stimulating and exciting and really interesting. Well, it's difficult to say which publication I'm most proud of, because I think with all of them, they, often on the surface, it looks like they've been fairly easy to write, but they're all enormous amount of work. They're absolutely, every single one has been really hard work, and I don't think there's a single book or paper where I thought, I just can't do this anymore. So I'm kind of proud of getting through any of them. But I think the ones that I'm most proud of, there's a monograph that I did just called The Hierarchy of Wants, which is about trying to create a more comprehensive framework for understanding people and for understanding practice. And it particularly tries to link up social change with psychological change and understand that in one framework. And that's freely available on the internet. And I'm really proud of that one, actually, even though I don't think anybody's read it. But that's one that I really like. Another book that I'm really proud of is a book that I did called Essential Research Findings in Counselling and Psychotherapy, which tries to bring together all the data on psychotherapy research, what we know about what's effective. And I think I'm proud of that one, just because when I look back on that, I just think, how did I manage to bring all that work? There was just thousands of papers that I remember trawling through for that book. And at the moment, I'm thinking about doing a second edition, and the thought of rewriting it and revising it makes me, think about how much work it was to, pull that together. And then I think another book that I'm really proud of is one that I did a couple of years ago called Existential Psychotherapy and Counselling, which in a sense, a lot of my books have been about drawing together other people's ideas. And that was the first one that really was developing my ideas and my ways of practicing as a psychologist, drawing on people like Buber and relational ideas and concepts of relational depth, as well as some of the existential ideas around freedom and meaning and limitations. So I think probably that's the one that I'm kind of most proud of and feel really says what it is that I want to say. But there's also other books that I'm working on, and I'd like to develop more around that link between the psychotherapy and the kind of social justice and political sphere, and try and publish on that I'm hoping would come out. The last couple of books I've dedicated to my two oldest kids, and I've got another 2 kids to go. So once I've done 2 more books, I can finish there. CREST is the Centre for Research in Social and Psychological Transformation, based here in the Department of Psychology at the University of Roehampton. And when I moved to the University of Roehampton a few years ago, that was one of the first things that we did with colleagues like Joel Voss and Edith Stephan, was to set up the research centre. And it's been really important because sometimes in the counselling psychology field, research isn't our strong point. And sometimes areas like clinical psychology, educational psychology do more research, but there's an enormous amount of questions that as counselling psychologists we can be asking, and doing some great research, drawing on both qualitative methods and also quantitative methods as a way of understanding more about the work we do. So the Research Centre has a number of active research projects that a number of us are involved in, and we meet regularly. Part of it is a clinic that we run where we see students at the moment at the university and also people from the wider community, and we provide them with a free counselling service. But it's also a chance for us to work with them to find out more about particular methods, like Edith Stephan's working on meaning-centred approaches to therapy. We're looking at pluralistic approaches and trying to understand more about shared decision-making and about how clients work with goals. So there's a number of different projects that we're working on. And it is a very vibrant centre. We have seminars, we have conferences, and it's a chance to bring people together and talk about research in relation to counselling psychology, and really how we can use research to improve the work that we do, and develop better ways of being counselling psychologists. I would genuinely say it's a really good profession to go into. I think people who work as counselling psychologists are very often very happy, in my experience, and enjoy the role, because it has that mixture of, as well as having a variety of different activities, there's a sense of having quite a lot of independence, but also working very closely in relationship with other people. So I'd really encourage people to go for it as one of the kind of psychological therapies that people can pursue as a profession. I'm certainly very pleased for myself that I went on to train. Initially I was a counsellor and a psychotherapist, and then went on to train as a counselling psychologist. And I do really like that identity as a counselling psychologist. I find that a very positive one. So I'd say go for it if that feels suits you. I think the biggest downside is paying, obviously, for the training. It's challenging, and that's not true for all the psychological professions, and hopefully that will change one day, or there'll be more support for that. But that is, to prepare for that. It's a very intensive training. It's intensive at a personal level and at an academic level and at a practical level. And I guess you need to be prepared for that level of challenge. Sometimes people come into the trainings and they think, I'm going to do a full-time job and I'm going to train as a counselling psychologist, and it's really difficult to do that. You really need to concentrate on the training and put everything into it if you want to get through that. One thing I'd say, that if you are doing a training, it's really important to network. So things like going to conferences, like the annual Counselling Psychology conference, is really important as a way of finding out about other people who are working in the field, and staying connected with people, really, so that when you come out of it, that you have a network of people that can help you into employment. Very much linked to that, I think, is about maybe thinking about a specialism, like if there's an area that you're particularly interested in working with, whether it's young people or addictions or eating disorders. Often developing in one particular area rather than being a generalist is a good way of helping yourself to find a role out in the field. And obviously if it's something that you're interested in as well, it means that you'll be working in an area that you find rewarding. I mean, one of the distinctive areas of counselling psychology is also that there's a very big social justice element. And if you look at counselling psychology in the States, for instance, then that's really integrated in the work that counselling psychologists do. So that when we're looking at psychological problems, we're not just understanding that in terms of psychological processes and psychological mechanisms, but also in the real lives and in the real world that people live in terms of poverty, in terms of racism, in terms of sexism. And that's great to be involved in a profession which is able to look at those issues alongside each other and to really understand people in that whole way and not just solely at the psychological level.